For more on this story, Assembly of First Nations National Chief Roseanne Archibald. She's in Ottawa. National Chief Archibald, thank you for speaking with us today. I'd like to start by asking you, are you disappointed in today's announcement?
Actually, many of the things that we asked for in our motion passed by the AFN executive have been met. And particularly the raising of the flag on November 7th, that was in our motion, and then lowering it on November 8th for Indigenous veterans. As I understand, that's the first time that the flag will be lowered on November 8th that we're aware of. So that's something I think really positive for the many Indigenous veterans who have served this country and who have made sacrifices. Of course, some of them didn't return home. So that's, to us, something that's very constructive. We also were, as you are aware, in favor of raising the flag ahead of Remembrance Day to honor all of the veterans in Canada. And the other thing that's really positive about today's announcement was that we're going to look at a process to accelerate the 94 TRC calls to action, particularly the ones around the National Council on Reconciliation, and making sure that, you know, there's an annual report card and a process and funding and supports and resources given to that process to make sure that the TRC calls to action are in fact completed and accelerated. We're in year 6, and we know that there's only been about 10 of those 94 fully implemented. So we're looking forward to that process with the government.
Is that what you want people to take away from today's announcement, that accelerated timeline to actually take steps toward completing those calls to action?
What we wanted, the other thing that we actually appreciate in the announcement is that the National Truth and Reconciliation flag, which was designed by survivors, will find a home on Parliament Hill to recognize and honor all of the survivors, the intergenerational trauma survivors, and particularly our little ones who did not make it home. And those little ones are children who are being recovered from what I call the institutions of assimilation and genocide. So having that flag, finding a home for that flag on Parliament Hill is also something that's really important. And I said this earlier in another interview that, you know, when we raise the flag, we have to do something in another symbolic gesture and take action. And so we're getting that with our recommendations, our solutions that we put forward being implemented in through this statement from the Canadian government. I mean, we're not only getting the symbolic gestures that we're asking for, but we're also getting a process, a joint action plan. And that to us is really important, that action is going to come out of this, not just a symbolic gesture.
So overall, would you say today's announcement has satisfied what you were hoping to happen?
Yeah, we wanted to find that path forward, what we call the healing path forward, that would honor the lives of our children, the thousands of children that have been found so far and will continue to be found across Canada. It honors them. At the same time, it honors our veterans. And you know, our First Nations have one of the highest per capita sign-up of any sector in society during World War I and World War II. Per capita, many of our men and women signed up for those wars. And to us, that's a really important thing to remember, that Veterans and Remembrance Day is as much about Indigenous sacrifices as it is about all of the veterans that have sacrificed their lives and taken up, those positions to defend this country, which is really the country that is built upon First Nations land.
While we have you here on our program today, I'd like to ask you a question about a different topic. You're in talks with the federal government about the court-ordered compensation for children who face discrimination in the child welfare system. I'm curious as to why you decided to agree to go into talks with the federal government to try and reach a solution.
Our children are counting on us to find solutions, to come to an agreement where compensation will occur. Compensation is not justice. I've said that several times. But those children that have been removed from their homes and have been the subject of discrimination need compensation. So that's why we're sitting down. The other part of it is to eliminate the discrimination that has been going on in the child welfare system since its inception, and it's going on today still. And our negotiations are a way to end that discrimination once and for all. And so we can only do that by sitting down and coming to an agreement with the federal government as one of the parties that is a part of that CHRT process. You know that it's not just the Assembly of First Nations, it's the Chiefs of Ontario, Anishinaabe Nation, the First Nation Caring Society. It's the Mushuam group that launched the class action. There are a number of people in this process that are part of those negotiations, and we're one of them. And we want to sit down and resolve this issue for the betterment of our children.
We've seen this play out in the courts for 14 years now. Are you hopeful? Do you believe that you can get to that agreement? Are the stakes on the table that, yes, you think you can get to something that would be satisfactory for you?
Well, there's two things. One is the negotiations and whether we get there. The other thing that is sort of a bit of a safety net is that we can continue to go on with the litigation because we have won every battle so far. And so if these negotiations don't result in an agreement, then we want an accelerated process that the litigation proceed as quickly as possible so we can settle this matter either through our negotiations or through the court system. So to us, it really is an opportunity either way for our children to begin to be compensated and for us to end discrimination and eventually find justice that we're searching for.
And the last thing I want to ask you about really quickly, the Vatican has confirmed that the Pope plans to come to Canada for the process of reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. Do you expect more than an apology from the Pope? Is that needed at this moment in time?
Yes, we have called not only for an apology from the Pope, we have called for reparations. We have actually outlined some of the immediate things that the Catholic Church can do. For example, returning land for where the dioceses are on First Nations lands. And that's one of the reparations they can make. There's ongoing investigations into criminal matters that have to be resolved. Those things, somebody has to be charged in this case. You do not, bury a child without a marker. Something has happened in this case that is criminal in nature, and we want to make sure that charges are laid and that those children do receive justice through the justice system. And most importantly, with the Catholic Church, this is an intergenerational harm that has happened. It's not just the survivors, but it's all of the families and all of the descendants. And that means a long-term investment in healing. We keep talking about the healing path forward, and we do have that expectation, and it's a reasonable expectation that the Church will walk with us on that healing path, which means investment in healing processes in the long term.
National Chief Archibald, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Katie. Take care.
For more on the federal government's decision, Marc Miller is Minister of Crown-Indigenous Relations. He is in Ottawa. Minister, thank you very much for speaking with us today. Can you tell us how you arrived at this decision?
Well, as you heard, Katie, from the National Chief, it was certainly not an easy one. A number of discussions over the last little while with survivors, with national advocacy groups, among which the AFN is one of them. A lot of difficult discussions on what the path forward was. What we've heard loud and clear was that this was something that was the responsibility of the federal government, but that there was no clear consensus. Some leaders, survivors, advocates wanted the flags to stay down for an indeterminate period of time until every discovery is made. Obviously, we respect that view. Others felt it was time to go up, but what we did hear loud and clear was, do not put us on the backs of Indigenous peoples. So that discussion took place over the last little while, and the decision was made this morning after we reviewed and acquiesced to a number of the elements that you talked about with the national chief earlier on the step forward in raising the flags at sunset on Sunday, and then lowering them out of respect for Indigenous veterans on the 8th, then raising them again in anticipation of the 11th of November, then lowering them to honor all our veterans who laid down their lives for this country, after which they would be raised, and at the same time raising the National Truth and Reconciliation, the National Center of Truth and Reconciliation Survivor Circle's flag that was commissioned and raised on September 30th, to honor that ongoing commitment to get to the truth of this.
Now, as tragic and as brutal and difficult as this is, there will be further discoveries of graves at residential school sites in Canada. When these discoveries are made, as horrific as they are, will the flags be lowered again?
And I wish I had a much better answer than the one I am going to present to you. What we've heard loud and clear is from Indigenous communities is we need to give them the space to take those decisions when they come, and Canada will be there with them. The National, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission has said loud and clear that we have to give that space to those communities. If we come with a tailored one-size-fits-all solution, it isn't appropriate and respectful to the communities that will be reeling from these discoveries. And I think Canadians and Indigenous peoples know this to be true, but all Canadians should brace themselves for further discoveries as those searches are made, and there are ones ongoing, and they will doubtless reveal more horrors.
The government has committed to fly the National Centre for Truth and Reconciliation Survivors flag in what you're calling a suitable location somewhere within the parliamentary precinct, which is essentially Parliament Hill. When can we expect that to happen?
Soon. I mean, it's to be decided. That decision has not been fully made, but we're committed to do so and fly it for the necessary required time. That is the flag that was commissioned and was raised on September 30th, and we will keep it raised out of respect.
Now, one thing the National Chief told us in that interview that you just heard was that she was encouraged by the promise to expedite the 94 TRC calls to action. What, from your perspective, in your role, what is the next step here to meet that?
Yeah, well, I think we have to acknowledge that this has been slow, and we do sort of throw numbers at each other, whether it's 10 or more complete ones or 80% of the ones underway, and then we point fingers at each other, wondering which ones are complete and which ones aren't. What I've heard squarely from the National Chief is they want to work with us on the actions numbered 53 and forward that govern the more accountability as to which ones have been fulfilled, which ones are in progress, and which ones have not been fulfilled. There was a budgetary amount announced for the years 2021 of 120 million for a National Center of Reconciliation that will provide that transparency and accountability, and it will be an important step forward in making sure that the federal government and all institutions across Canada that the TRC calls for action are held to account, and progress is fully displayed for all to see.
Your government is also working to advance Call to Action 81, the installation of a national monument to honor the residential school survivors. Where do things stand on that front?
Well, as you know, there has been budgetary amounts allotted to that as part of the announcements made earlier this year. We've made progress. We still have yet to choose a location that falls under the Minister of Heritage, but it is something that we are moving on, as well as being able to honor it in every major city across Canada.
In the statement today from the AFN, one thing that was highlighted was calls to action surrounding the National Council for Reconciliation. When exactly will a National Council be established?
Well, there is an interim group in place, and they have made a report to us, and we're actioning it. Part of that was making sure there was operational funding, and it's what I'd mentioned earlier, that in budget 2020-2021, there was about $120 million that was dedicated to the startup and operational funding of that body, and we're eager to get that going and seeing some traction, because this is as much about fulfilling all the other calls to action as it it is a process of transparency and accountability, which those particular calls cover.
But as I understand it, in 2017, this board was created, the interim board was created in 2017. How much longer until the council is formally established?
Well, we're looking to accelerate that, and that was part of the discussion that I did have with the national chief, and part of the resolution that was covered by that is to have AFN work with us on an action plan, really to get that up and running. So I think people can expect that to be accelerated.
The last thing I want to ask you about is the Vatican, and the Pope has conversations are underway, and it appears the Pope is planning to travel to Canada as part of a reconciliation mission. I'm curious as to whether you've had any update as to when that might happen, and whether the Vatican has indicated it will involve more than just an apology, assuming it involves an apology.
I don't have anything additional to add. These trips do take time and a lot of planning, and I don't have any update to share with you publicly on that. They, as you heard the national chief, I think people do expect an apology that is full and complete as a first step on the path to healing, but more concrete actions as well.
Minister Miller, I want to thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.